In the heart of the mist-choked mountains lies Hollow Pines, a forgotten town where secrets cling to the trees and the past never truly dies. When Calla Monroe returns after her mother's mysterious death, she finds herself pulled into the fog, the silence, and the eyes watching her from the edge of the forest. The townspeople speak of old curses, of nights when the moon turns red and the wolves sing to the dark. And then there's Rowan Vale, the boy who never left, the one who knows why her mother fled and what runs in Calla's blood. Because in Hollow Pines, the woods remember, and some things aren't just legends. If you enjoyed dark small-town mysteries and slow-burn werewolf horror, like and subscribe for Part 2. The Howl Beneath the Fog. The road to Hollow Pines wound like a serpent through the mountains, slick with mist and memory. Calla Monroe sat stiff in the back seat of her aunt's old Subaru, her forehead against the cold glass, watching as the last traces of sunlight drowned behind the ridge. Pines crowded the horizon like a congregation of sentinels, their black needles whispering in the wind. She hadn't spoken in an hour. The radio had gone silent too, replaced by the hum of the tires against wet asphalt. Her Aunt Evelyn gripped the steering wheel like she was holding on to more than just control of the car, like she was holding herself together. "You'll get used to the fog," Evelyn said finally, her voice a soft rasp. "It never really leaves. The mountains keep it." Calla didn't answer. Her reflection in the window looked pale and ghostly, her eyes hollowed from days without real sleep. In the glass she could almost see her mother's face overlaying her own, a memory bleeding through. "Mom, why didn't you tell me about this place?" The question had haunted her since the funeral. There had been no warning, no sign of illness, no explanation for why her mother's heart had simply stopped. Just a call in the middle of the night and a box of ashes waiting on a table she wasn't ready to face. Now she was here, in the town her mother had sworn never to return to. Evelyn cleared her throat. "You'll stay with me until we figure things out. The house might be different from what you remember." "I don't remember it at all," Calla murmured. The car turned off the main road onto a narrow gravel lane flanked by towering pines. The headlights cut through fog so thick it looked alive, curling like smoke around the trees. The smell of damp earth and pine resin seeped through the vents, mingling with the faint scent of gasoline and old upholstery. Somewhere in the distance an owl cried, a long, low note that echoed through the trees. They emerged into a clearing. Evelyn's house stood at the edge of the woods, a two-story farmhouse that looked like it had been swallowed by time. The paint had peeled away in strips, ivy creeping across the porch rails. A single lantern glowed near the door, its light trembling against the fog. Evelyn parked and shut off the engine. Silence folded in around them. "Home sweet home," she said softly, though there wasn't much sweetness in it. Calla stepped out, gravel crunching under her boots. The air was colder than she expected, heavy, like it carried the weight of the forest itself. Her breath fogged out in front of her. As she reached for her suitcase, she noticed something, just beyond the porch steps. The woods. They seemed to press close, as though they were listening. The trees weren't still. They swayed without wind, their shadows stretching too far. Her stomach twisted. "Come on," Evelyn said sharply, noticing her stare. "Inside before dark." Calla hesitated. "Is it always this quiet?" Evelyn paused mid-step. "Quiet is good here," she said after a beat. "Means the woods are sleeping." That night, as rain began to patter against the windows, Calla explored her new room upstairs. It smelled faintly of cedar and dust. A small bed, a dresser, a cracked mirror. The window faced the forest. She could see only fog and a hint of movement. Branches swaying, maybe. Or something else. She unpacked slowly. Every sound in the house, the creak of the floorboards, the sigh of the wind through the chimney felt amplified. There was a tension in the air, as though the walls themselves remembered things better left forgotten. On the dresser sat a photograph of her mother and Evelyn, taken years ago. Both of them smiling, standing in front of this very house. But behind them, if Calla looked closely, She could almost swear there was something. A shape in the tree line. A shadow that didn't belong. She rubbed her thumb over the glass, and it vanished. Just a trick of the light. A trick of— Calla? Evelyn's voice came from the doorway. You all right? Yeah. Just tired. Evelyn lingered, eyes soft but wary. It's a hard place, Hollow Pines. It remembers things. You'll feel it, especially at night. Calla frowned. What do you mean? Her aunt hesitated, then said only, Don't go into the woods after dark. Ever. Promise me. Why? Because some doors, once opened, don't close again. Evelyn left before Calla could ask more. The rain thickened into a downpour. Hours passed. Calla lay awake, listening to it drum against the roof. The power flickered once, twice, then steadied. Somewhere in the forest, a branch cracked, a sharp, echoing sound that made her sit up. Silence followed. Then, faintly, she heard it. Whispering. It was soft, almost like the wind at first, but it grew, layered, strange, as though several voices were speaking at once, words she couldn't understand, half-formed and rhythmic. Her skin prickled. She pushed the curtain aside and peered into the dark. The forest looked like a wall of black smoke. No shapes, no light. But in the fog, something moved. A shimmer of silver, low to the ground, gliding between trees. A wolf? No. It was too large, too fluid. The whispering stopped. A sound like a breath, hot and close, brushed the back of her neck. She spun around. Nothing. Just her reflection in the mirror. Pale face, wide eyes, a single flicker of movement behind her that vanished when she turned again. She backed toward her bed and pulled the blanket tight around her shoulders. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She tried to convince herself it was just nerves, exhaustion, maybe a dream she hadn't realized she was having. Then she noticed something on the window. 3 long claw marks, carved clean through the condensation. Calla froze. Downstairs, the front door creaked open, then closed. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, moved across the floorboards below. Aunt Evelyn? She whispered. No answer. The steps stopped. The house held its breath. Then, as if the night itself exhaled, the whispering started again. Fainter now, but closer, rising from the woods and threading through the cracks in the walls like smoke. Calla clutched her blanket tighter, staring at the window until dawn began to break, and the claw marks faded with the light. But the whispering didn't stop. It only went quiet enough to wait. The fog never left Hollow Pines. It wasn't morning mist that burned away with sunlight. It lingered, thick and sentient, curling between the trees like something alive. By the time Calla stepped outside that afternoon, it felt as though the air itself had eyes. Evelyn was gone, off running errands in town, and the house was too quiet. The silence had a pulse. Every creak in the wood seemed to come from somewhere deliberate. Calla pulled on her jacket, grabbed her phone, and told herself she was just going for a walk. Just air, just light, just space to think. But her feet carried her toward the forest. The woods loomed at the edge of the property, black-green and endless. Up close, the tree line looked like a barrier, a wall of shadows stitched together by fog. Each pine was marked by age, twisted roots like bones, bark scarred with claw-like gashes. She stopped at the first tree. 3 parallel marks, deep and ragged, cutting through the wood as though something massive had raked it. Her breath caught. Bears, she muttered, though her voice came out thin. Maybe? The words sounded foolish in the open air. The fog didn't care about logic. It only swallowed sound. A faint whisper rippled through the mist. Her blood turned cold. It wasn't the wind. It was too deliberate. The cadence was wrong. Like someone speaking from just behind her, their mouth close to her ear, forming words she couldn't understand. She spun around. No one. Only fog. Hello? She called out. Is someone there? The forest seemed to listen. And then something answered. Not in words. In movement. A shape darted between the trees, Fast, black, soundless. Too large to be human, too quick to be animal. She stumbled back, tripping on a root, her heart hammering so hard she felt it in her throat. Her phone slipped from her hand and landed face down in the dirt. When she reached for it, the whisper came again, lower now. Closer. Her hands trembled as she snatched the phone up. No service. Of course. The trees were too thick. Okay. That's enough air, she whispered to herself, trying to laugh, but the sound cracked in her throat. I'm going back. She turned and froze. There was something standing at the edge of the fog. Tall, wrongly shaped. Its limbs too long, its shadow stretching across the ground like spilled ink. The outline shimmered, as though the light couldn't quite decide if it wanted to reveal it. Two eyes glowed faintly from the dark. Calla couldn't move, her body locked in instinctive terror, her breath shallow. The thing tilted its head, slowly, curiously, like it was studying her. Then, with a twitching motion, it started to move forward. No footsteps, just gliding. She ran. Branches whipped against her arms, her lungs burning. The forest blurred. She could hear it behind her, its pace inhuman, like wind and heartbeat fused together. The whispering rose again, layered voices speaking in a dead language that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Stop, she screamed, though she didn't know who she was begging. Her boot snagged on a fallen branch. She fell hard, the impact jolting through her ribs. The world spun. She tried to crawl, mud clinging to her palms. And then it was there. A shadow descending, clawed hands reaching for her. Its face, or what passed for one, was a hollow of smoke, edges bleeding into nothing. The air stank of iron and decay. Calla's scream caught in her throat. But before the creature could touch her, a sound tore through the forest. Deep, guttural, furious. A growl. From the trees to her left, a wolf exploded into motion. Not just large, massive, nearly as big as a man, fur silvered and thick, eyes like molten gold. It slammed into the shadow creature, the impact cracking through the clearing like thunder. Calla scrambled backward, watching in horror and awe as the two figures collided. The creature screeched, its voice more air than sound, as the wolf's teeth tore through its smoky form. Shadows rippled and split like black mist under moonlight. The wolf bit down harder, dragging the thing to the ground. The forest pulsed with sound, growls, shrieks, the rush of movement. Calla could barely breathe. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The shadow creature dissolved into smoke, vanishing into the ground with a hiss that smelled like burnt pine. The wolf turned. Calla froze again, every muscle taut. The creature's golden eyes fixed on her, intelligent, sharp, aware. Not just animal. There was something human behind them, something she recognized but couldn't name. They stayed like that for several heartbeats. Girl and beast, both trembling, both caught in the gravity of something ancient and invisible. Then, without a sound, the wolf turned and vanished into the trees, swallowed by fog. Calla sat in the dirt long after it was gone, her pulse still racing. The forest was silent again, but not peaceful. It felt like it was holding its breath. She forced herself up and stumbled back toward the house, not daring to look behind her. The fog seemed to follow her, clinging to her shoes, whispering secrets just out of reach. By the time she reached the porch, her clothes were streaked with mud, her hands trembling so hard she could barely find the doorknob. Evelyn was in the kitchen when Calla burst in, eyes wide. Calla, what happened? You look like you've seen... There was something in the woods, Calla gasped. It attacked me, I swear. Her aunt's expression shifted instantly from concern to something colder. Not disbelief, but recognition. Did it touch you? Evelyn asked sharply. What? No, it didn't. Then listen to me and listen carefully. Evelyn stepped closer, gripping her shoulders. Her hands were trembling. You must not go near the forest again. Not alone. Not after dark. Do you understand? Calla nodded weakly. her throat tight. What was it? Evelyn hesitated. Some things in Hollow Pines don't belong to this world anymore. That night, Calla couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the golden gaze of the wolf and the empty shadow that had reached for her. Her mind replayed the sound of the growl, the sharp, savage protection in it. It didn't feel like an attack. It felt like a warning. A rescue. At one point, she rose and went to the window. The fog had thinned just enough to see the first shimmer of moonlight on the trees. There, just beyond the edge of the woods, two golden eyes blinked up at her, glowing faintly in the dark. Calla's breath caught. The wolf was watching her. Not hunting. Watching. And before she could move, it turned and disappeared once more into the endless black of the forest. The whispering didn't come that night, but she could feel something new in the air, an invisible thread stretching between her and the woods, humming with quiet promise. She didn't know it yet, but the wolf had already chosen her. The fog followed Calla to school. It clung to the cracked asphalt of Hollow Pines High like a ghost reluctant to let her go, weaving through the parking lot and swallowing the faded yellow lines. The building itself was old, red brick weathered by mountain rain, windows streaked with years of mist and moss. It looked more like an asylum than a school. Calla stood at the edge of the lot, her backpack heavy on her shoulder, her breath frosting in the morning chill. The sky was the color of pewter, the air thick with that faint metallic scent the woods always carried, like blood and pine sap. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw golden eyes in the dark and heard the whispering crawl through her thoughts like static. But she told herself this was normal, that she was starting over, that the things in the woods were just grief and stress, carved into hallucination. New girl, right? Calla flinched. A tall boy with a mop of curls and an easy smile leaned against the school's front door, hands in his jacket pockets. "Alec," he said, offering a lopsided grin. "Aunt Evelyn said you'd be starting today. I live down the road from her. Welcome to Hollow Pines." "Calla," she replied, managing a small nod. You, know my aunt?" "Everyone knows everyone here." Alec laughed lightly. "Population, 1-200 and a couple dozen secrets." Calla tried to smile, but it came out hollow. "Sounds cozy. More like cursed," he said under his breath, then flashed her another grin. "Kidding, mostly." Inside, the hallways were dimly lit and smelled faintly of bleach and old books. Students drifted in clusters, voices low. The place had an undercurrent of something. Not exactly fear, but watchfulness. Like everyone was pretending not to see something they all knew was there. By third period, Calla had memorized the rhythm of the whispers. Not the forest's, but the ones that trailed after her. "That's the Monroe girl, the one whose mom, you know." She kept her head down, took a seat near the window, and tried to focus on her sketchbook. Drawing helped. Lines, shadows, structure, things she could control. That was when she felt it. Someone watching her. She looked up. Across the classroom, a boy sat in the far corner, half in shadow. Broad shoulders under a dark hoodie, jaw sharp, expression unreadable. His eyes, golden, almost amber, caught the dim light like the reflection of fire. He didn't look away when she met his gaze. The teacher's voice faded into background noise. Time seemed to slow, the air between them thickening, electric. Calla felt something strange, a pulse in her wrist, where the faint rune still lingered from her dream. The boy blinked once, slow, and she swore she saw his nostrils flare, like he was catching her scent. Then the bell rang. The spell broke. Students poured out, laughter and footsteps breaking the silence. Calla glanced back, but the seat in the corner was empty. At lunch, Alec found her sitting alone at the edge of the quad. "You survived the morning," he said, sliding his tray beside hers. "That's better than most new kids." Calla smirked faintly. Do they usually die? Depends on who they hang around with. He leaned closer. You meet Luka yet? Her fork paused midair. Who? Alec tilted his chin toward the far end of the courtyard. There he was, the boy from class, sitting under a dead pine, earbuds in, staring off toward the forest beyond the fence. That's Luka Hale, Alec said. We don't really talk to him. Why not? Because people who get close to him don't stay long. Calla frowned. Meaning what? Alec's grin didn't reach his eyes. Meaning exactly that. She looked back toward Luka. Even from here he radiated distance, not loneliness, but restraint, like someone holding back a storm. When the wind shifted, she thought she saw something on his forearm, a pale scar, running diagonally. It looked almost like a claw mark. Her pulse quickened. He glanced up and their eyes met again. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. Then he stood and walked away, disappearing into the fog that always clung to the woods beyond the fence. Alec watched him go, shaking his head. Seriously, stay away from him, Calla. He's got issues. So do I, she muttered, but her eyes didn't leave the place Luka had vanished. That afternoon, the sky darkened early. Rain pressed against the classroom windows during last period, the sound rhythmic and strange, almost like the whispering she'd heard before. She caught herself tracing the rune on her wrist under the desk, her thoughts restless. When the final bell rang, she decided to take the long way home, through the edge of the school field that bordered the forest. The fog was heavier now, muffling sound, swallowing color. She could hear her footsteps on the damp grass, the echo of her breathing and nothing else. Until a voice spoke behind her. You shouldn't walk this way. Calla turned sharply. Luka stood a few feet away, hood up, rain sliding down his jacket. Up close, his eyes looked even stranger, gold-ringed in gray like a storm caught inside sunlight. I can handle fog, she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. It's not the fog you need to worry about. His voice was low, quiet, but there was a weight to it, a warning that didn't feel like teasing. Then what should I worry about? She asked. He hesitated, his gaze flicking toward the forest. Things that don't like to be seen. For a heartbeat, the air between them thickened again. That same invisible pull, the hum beneath her skin. She could smell something faint on him. Pine, rain, and something animal. Luka stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar across his arm. 4 parallel lines deep and clean, just like the ones on the trees. Calla's breath hitched. What happened to you? His jaw tightened. You don't want to know. Try me. His gaze sharpened. You were near the woods yesterday. Something was following you. Her heart lurched. How do you know that? I just do. He looked at her like he could see right through her, past her fear, past her lies, into the part of her that still felt the forest's whispers crawling in her veins. You need to stay away from the tree line, he said. If you go back there, it won't stop. What won't stop? Luka's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. The things that wake when they smell blood. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and pine sap. Before she could ask more, he turned and walked away, fading into the fog just as the first roll of thunder cracked through the valley. Calla stood there, pulse roaring in her ears, the rune on her wrist burning faintly again, as though it knew his name. Luka Hale, the boy with the eyes of a wolf. The woods were calling her again. It began as a whisper on the wind, threading through the quiet of the night. Not words, not really. More like memory, humming just below hearing. Calla woke to it around 2 a.m., heart pounding, a film of cold sweat on her skin. The window was cracked open, letting in the scent of pine and damp earth. The fog outside glowed faintly in the moonlight. She sat up, pulse unsteady. The rune on her wrist, the one burned there from her dreams, pulsed with faint light. Once, twice, Then it went still. She didn't remember standing, didn't remember pulling on her jacket or stepping barefoot onto the cold floorboards. Her body moved as if it already knew the way. The house slept behind her. Evelyn's soft snoring drifted from the next room. The old clock downstairs ticked steadily. But the woods outside, the woods were alive. When she reached the porch, the fog parted like something was waiting. The forest whispered again, soft, rhythmic, beckoning. Calla hesitated at the tree line, Luka's warning echoing in her head. If you go back there, it won't stop. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something wanted her to come, not to harm her, to show her. She stepped forward. The forest swallowed her. The deeper she went, the quieter the world became. Even the crickets fell silent, as if sound itself was forbidden here. The air thickened with the scent of wet moss and cedar. Her flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied, the beam cutting through fog that seemed to move on its own. She followed an invisible rhythm, something old pulsing through the soil beneath her feet. The path wound between towering pines that grew tighter and tighter together, until the air felt like breath caught in her throat. Then she saw it, a circle of ancient stones, half buried in moss, cracked and cold, arranged in perfect symmetry. The fog gathered above them like a halo. The air shimmered faintly, as if the space itself was bending. Her flashlight flickered out. Moonlight filled the clearing instead, silver and cold. Calla stepped closer, drawn by a gravity she didn't understand. The stones were carved with runes like the one on her wrist. Some glowed faintly. Others looked as though they'd been scorched. As she reached the center, the air shifted, heavier now, charged. A chill ran down her spine. Then the whispering began again. But this time she understood pieces of it. Calla. Her mother's voice. Calla froze. Mom? The word came out barely above a breath. The fog swirled, taking shape. For an instant, just long enough for her heart to break, she saw her mother's outline, soft hair, gentle face, eyes filled with something like warning. Then the image flickered. Mom, what is this? What happened to you? Her mother's voice trembled through the air, distorted by echo. The hollow. Don't open it. Before Calla could speak again, the ground trembled. The air snapped with sudden static. Shadows bled from the trees, faint at first, then darker, forming around the edges of the clearing. The whispering turned sharp, angry. She stumbled back, fear clawing at her chest. The shadows moved wrong, jerky, liquid, their forms flickering between smoke and shape. Stay away, she shouted, though her voice barely carried. The shadows didn't listen. They reached toward her, their touch freezing the air around her fingers. The rune on her wrist flared, glowing gold. The creatures hissed and recoiled. A voice cut through the chaos. Calla! Luka. He burst into the clearing, his hoodie soaked, eyes blazing gold even in the half-light. What the hell are you doing here? I didn't mean to. There's no meaning to. You're standing in a summoning circle. Before she could respond, the shadows lunged again. Luka moved fast and faster than human, tackling one mid-leap. The thing shrieked as his arm slashed through it, dissolving it into smoke. Calla stared, frozen in shock. He turned to her, breathing hard. We need to go, now. What were those things? Nightborne. He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the tree line. Remnants of the hollow. You shouldn't have been able to draw them out. But move. They ran. The forest twisted around them, the trees seeming to shift and close ranks. The fog thickened, swallowing the moonlight until everything turned gray and soundless except for their footsteps. Calla's lungs burned. Her hand still glowed faintly where Luka held it. They didn't stop until they broke free of the woods, collapsing onto the wet grass near the edge of Evelyn's property. Calla doubled over, gasping. How did you find me? I felt it. Luka's chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, his voice edged with anger, or fear. When the wards around the circle broke, I knew someone was stupid enough to walk into it. Calla shot him a glare. I didn't know it was a summoning circle. You shouldn't have been able to hear it at all, he said, his gaze burning into her. Only those with a connection to the hollow can. Something in his tone made her stomach turn cold. What are you saying? He hesitated, jaw tightening. I'm saying you're not just some girl who moved here after her mother's death. That place responded to you. That's insane. Is it? Luka stepped closer. Your mother wasn't from here, was she? Or at least that's what she told you. Calla stopped. Don't open it. Her mother's warning echoed again in her head. She never talked about this town. Smart woman, Luka muttered, looking back at the dark tree line. But it's too late now. Once the hollow senses you, it doesn't forget. Calla wrapped her arms around herself. The hollow? He looked at her, really looked, his expression haunted. The place between worlds, where the Nightborne were sealed after the old war. It's what's left when magic rots. Her throat tightened. And the circle? A door. Luka's voice dropped low. One your blood tried to open tonight. Calla's breath caught. My blood? He turned toward the forest again, every muscle tense. Go inside, Calla. Lock the doors. Don't answer the whispers if you hear them again. Luka. He faced her once more. The moonlight hit his eyes, turning them bright gold. For a heartbeat, she saw the outline of his other form, a shimmer of fur and fang under his skin, restrained only by sheer will. Next time, he said softly, if you hear her voice, run the other way. Then he was gone, disappearing into the mist as silently as he'd come. Calla stood alone on the grass, the forest whispering behind her, the rune on her wrist still faintly aglow. She looked down at her hand, remembering her mother's words, Luka's warning, and the pull she still felt from the circle. Some part of her, deep and ancient, knew she would go back. Because the forest wasn't finished with her. And neither was the hollow. The next morning, hollow pines looked deceptively calm. Fog rolled through the streets as always, wrapping the town in quiet gauze. The sky hung low and pale, the scent of pine and rain thick in the air. It could have been any other day, if not for the faint burn still etched into Calla's wrist, glowing under her sleeve like a secret that refused to fade. Evelyn was already gone when she came downstairs. On the kitchen table sat a mug of cooling coffee and a note in her aunt's careful handwriting. Town errands. Stay out of the woods. Please, Calla. She stared at the words for a long moment, her pulse thrumming. Please, Calla. Like Evelyn already knew she wouldn't listen. By noon, she found herself walking down Main Street, heading toward the edge of town where the road narrowed into the forest trail. She told herself she wasn't looking for Luka, but she was. She needed answers. The town's outskirts gave way to fields of mist and towering trees. The forest loomed familiar now, though still carrying that hum of danger beneath its silence. The path forked near a crumbling stone bridge, the river beneath swollen with rain. That's where she saw him. Luka stood with his back to her, hood up, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. He was staring at the water, his posture tense, like someone expecting a fight. You always show up when I least want you to, he said without turning around. Calla crossed her arms. Then maybe you should stop saving me. A faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. That's not really an option. She stepped closer, her voice quieter. You knew what that place was. The stone circle. You knew what would happen. I told you not to go back. That's not an answer. Finally he turned. His eyes caught the dim light, gold flickering like embers under ash. You really want the truth? I'm tired of everyone treating me like I can't handle it. He studied her for a long moment, his jaw working. Then he said softly, the truth is, Hollow Pines isn't safe for people like you. People like me? He hesitated. Human. Calla blinked. You think I'm not human? I think you're something else, he said. Something that shouldn't exist. Not fully, anyway. The words landed between them like a blade. The sound of the river filled the silence. Luka took a step closer. What do you know about your mother? Calla's breath hitched. Not much. She never talked about this place. Evelyn said they left when they were teenagers. She didn't just leave. His tone hardened. She ran. The coven she was part of, they tried to seal the hollow. But they didn't finish it. Someone betrayed them. Your mother. She carried the rest of that magic when she fled. Calla's stomach twisted. You mean, she bound it, he interrupted. In you, the night you were born. Her thoughts reeled. That's not possible. Magic doesn't care about what's possible. His voice was low, rough. Your blood carries the same mark as the stone circle. That's why it responded to you. Calla shook her head, backing away a step. No, that can't be true. Look at your wrist, Luka said softly. The rune beneath her skin pulsed faintly in response to his voice. She swallowed hard. You knew this. You knew what I was. I knew something was calling you, he admitted. I didn't realize it was that strong. Then what are you, Luka? She demanded. Because you sure as hell aren't just some guy who happens to show up every time something tries to kill me. His expression darkened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said quietly, I'm what's left of the oath that guards this place. Meaning? He exhaled. The fog around him seemed to shift, moving with him, like it obeyed his breath. A long time ago, when the hollow first opened, the Nightborne tried to claim this world. A pack, my pack, bound ourselves to protect the seal. To keep them contained. Calla's heart pounded. Bound how? He met her gaze, and for a heartbeat, his pupils elongated, golden light bleeding through. By blood and by curse, we became what you saw in the woods. Her breath caught. You're saying, I'm saying I'm the wolf that saved you. Silence. The forest seemed to lean closer around them. She took a step back. That's impossible. I told you, Luka said quietly. Magic doesn't care what you believe. He reached for her wrist, gently turning her hand palm up. When you touched the stone circle, it reawakened something ancient. The hollow can sense it now, and it wants you back. His skin was warm against hers, almost burning. The rune flared brighter beneath his touch. For a moment, Calla saw something in his eyes, not wildness, but pain. Centuries of it. You've been protecting Hollow Pines, she whispered. All this time. I'm bound to, he said. The oath doesn't break. We keep the balance or everything falls apart. Calla's throat tightened. And me? You're part of it now, Luka said softly. You've tied yourself to the hollow, whether you meant to or not. A cold wind swept through the trees. The fog thickened. Luka's head snapped up, his expression hardening. They're close. Who? The Nightborne. His eyes flashed gold. They can smell your magic. A low, distant sound rose from the forest. Not quite a growl, not quite a scream. The ground beneath them trembled. Luka grabbed her hand. We need to go. They ran. The path blurred underfoot as fog curled like claws around the trees. Shadows flickered between trunks, whispering her name. Dozens of voices overlapping. Wrong. Calla stumbled once, her heart thundering. They're following us. Keep running, Luka barked. Don't stop until I tell you. They burst into another clearing, the same one she'd been dragged from the night before. The stone circle glowed faintly again, lines of light bleeding through cracks in the moss. Luka stopped short. They're trying to reopen it. What do we do? His jaw tightened. Stay behind me. He dropped her hand and stepped forward.
I will not be afraid.
For a heartbeat, the air bent around him, his shoulders broadening, his stance lowering. The growl that left his chest was low and primal, vibrating through the ground. The transformation wasn't violent. It was inevitable.
I will not
Bones
be afraid.
shifting beneath skin, light flickering like wildfire through fur. And then he was there. The
I will
wolf from
not
her
be
nightmares
afraid.
and her salvation, silver and massive, eyes burning gold. The Nightborne
will
surged from
not
the
be
fog,
afraid.
crawling like smoke. Luka met them head-on, his growls tearing through the air. The creatures
I will not
screamed,
be afraid.
recoiling from him, but more came, hundreds of shifting shadows spilling into the clearing. Calla's
I
hand
will
went to her
not be
wrist.
afraid.
The rune glowed, pulsing in rhythm with Luka's eyes. Without thinking, she lifted her palm toward the circle, and the light exploded outward, forming a barrier that stopped the Nightborne in their tracks. They hissed and writhed, their edges dissolving. The air went still. Then, silence. The shadows vanished. Luka, still in wolf form, turned to her, fur bristling, chest heaving. His eyes met hers, golden, alive, haunted. He padded forward slowly. Calla's fear melted into something else. Awe. Recognition. You saved me again, she whispered. The wolf tilted his head slightly as if listening. Then, for the briefest moment, he bowed. And just like that, he was gone, melting back into the forest mist. Calla fell to her knees, trembling, the echo of his growl still vibrating in her bones. The truth about Luka Hale wasn't human, but neither, she was starting to realize, was she. The nightmares began that same night. Calla had barely drifted to sleep when the forest crept into her dreams, whispering, breathing. She stood beneath the same black trees, moonlight spilling like milk through the branches. The air shimmered, heavy with mist. Somewhere ahead, her mother was singing. Sanguis et luna, protego cor tum. The voice was low and melodic, threaded with sorrow. Calla followed it, her feet bare on cold soil, the rune on her wrist burning like fire. The song drew her toward a clearing, the stone circle again. But this time her mother was there, kneeling before one of the stones, her white dress soaked in moonlight. "Mom?" Calla whispered. Her mother turned. The face was the same, soft, kind, yet filled with an ache that didn't belong to the living. "You shouldn't be here, Calla." "I don't understand." Her mother's eyes glowed faintly silver. The hollow remembers. It always remembers its blood. Calla reached out, but the moment her fingers brushed her mother's hand, everything went black. Then, dirt. The smell of it, thick and raw, filling her lungs. She woke, gasping. Her sheets were tangled. The window was open, wind pushing the curtains inward. The air in her room smelled like earth and pine. When she sat up, her hands were covered in soil, and the rune burned brighter than ever, lines of light snaking up her wrist like living fire. She stumbled out of bed, heart racing, and scrubbed her hands at the sink until they were raw. But no matter how much she washed, the faint shimmer of silver dust clung to her skin. She pressed a towel to her face, shaking. Then came the whisper, "Calla." Her head snapped up. The voice wasn't in her head this time. It came from outside the window. She turned slowly. Fog had rolled over the backyard, thick as ocean foam. Beyond the fence, the woods waited, dark, watchful. A faint shape moved between the trees. Not a shadow. Not quite a man. "Luka," she whispered. No answer. Only the forest breathing. She closed the curtains and slid to the floor, hugging her knees. Her mind replayed her mother's words. The hollow remembers its blood. She couldn't stay silent anymore. She had to find out what her mother had done, and what it meant for her. By morning, Hollow Pines was gray again, the kind of day where sunlight never fully arrived. Evelyn noticed the circles under Calla's eyes at breakfast. "You didn't sleep." "Bad dreams," Calla muttered. Her aunt hesitated, then said, Did you go near the woods again? No. Yes, in her dreams. Evelyn poured coffee, voice low. Sometimes when people stay here too long, the forest gets into them, makes them see things, hear things. Calla looked up sharply. You mean like Mom? Evelyn froze. What do you remember about her? Nothing, that's the problem. Calla's voice cracked slightly. You never tell me anything. Her aunt sighed, rubbing her temples. Your mother was complicated. She believed Hollow Pines was special, that it needed protecting. She wasn't wrong, but the way she tried. Evelyn trailed off, shaking her head. I lost my sister long before she died. Calla stared. She was protecting something, wasn't she? Evelyn looked up, and for once didn't deny it. You shouldn't go digging through her past, Calla. It won't bring her back. Maybe not, Calla thought, but it might explain why I keep dreaming of her. That night, she searched her mother's old room upstairs, the one Evelyn never entered. Dust blanketed the shelves. The air smelled faintly of lavender and smoke. The closet creaked when she opened it, revealing boxes stacked high with papers, old journals, candles, and a small chest carved with runes. The chest was locked, but when she touched the lid, the rune on her wrist flared, and the latch clicked open. Inside lay a stack of letters, a cracked mirror, and a locket shaped like a crescent moon. Beneath them was a folded sheet of parchment covered in inked symbols, the same ones from her dream. Her breath caught. She recognized one word in the center, written in Latin, protego, protection. Suddenly a whisper filled the air again, not from outside, but inside her head this time. Finish what I started. She dropped the parchment, heart hammering. The words had been her mother's voice. Clear, desperate. Calla backed away from the chest, bumping into the wall. Her pulse raced. She wanted to run, but instead she picked the paper back up, tracing the symbols with shaking fingers. One of them matched the mark on her wrist. It wasn't random. It was part of a spell. Later that night, Calla stood before the mirror, rolling up her sleeve. The rune pulsed faintly like a heartbeat beneath her skin. She whispered the word from the parchment. Protego. The lights flickered. Wind rushed through the room, though the windows were shut. The rune flared white-hot, and for a heartbeat the reflection in the mirror wasn't her. It was her mother, eyes wide, mouth open as if trying to speak. Calla stumbled back, gasping. Then the reflection blinked and changed back. Her own face stared back at her, pale and trembling. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, shattering the silence. It was a text from Luka. Luka, you need to stay inside tonight. The Hollow is restless. Luka, and whatever you do, don't say their names. She stared at the message, her breath uneven. Their names. Did he mean the Nightborne? Before she could respond, another message appeared. Luka, they can hear you when you dream. The phone screen flickered, static lines cutting through the text, and then went dark. Calla sat frozen. The silence around her deepened. Then came the faintest creak from the hallway. She grabbed her phone like a weapon and stepped toward the door. It was open an inch wider than before. Evelyn, she whispered. No answer. The air had changed. Colder. Charged. She could smell pine and wet soil again. She inched closer, every board creaking under her feet. When she reached the doorway, she froze. Something moved in the corner of the hall, a ripple in the dark, almost shapeless. Then a whisper. Moonbound. Her pulse stopped. The thing in the dark knew her name. The next instant, the light from her room flared, white and searing, and the shadow vanished. The rune on her wrist was glowing like molten silver, burning and beautiful. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her arm, gasping through tears. When the light finally faded, the house was silent again. The door was closed. The air was still. But when she looked at her wrist, a new symbol had appeared beside the rune. A crescent moon entwined with a wolf's fang. Luka's mark. And she didn't remember how it got there. The day began in silence. No wind, no birds. Even the trees outside Hollow Pines High seemed to hold their breath. Calla felt it the moment she stepped off the bus, a pressure in the air, like the town itself was waiting for something to go wrong. She hadn't seen Luka since the night before. His last message still lingered on her phone. "They can hear you when you dream." She didn't know what that meant, but she hadn't slept since. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt something watching. By third period, she'd stopped pretending to pay attention. The classroom clock ticked too loud. The shadows on the walls seemed to move when she wasn't looking. "Hey," a voice whispered beside her. It was Alec, the only person in Hollow Pines who still tried to make conversation. His smile was easy, but his eyes were sharp. "You okay? You look, I don't know, like you saw a ghost." She forced a small laugh. "Something like that." He tilted his head. "You sure you're not just spooked by this place? It's kind of a vibe. Creepy woods, haunted town, all that folklore crap." "I've seen worse." "Yeah?" His smile deepened, curious. "Like what?" Before she could answer, the classroom lights flickered. Once, twice, then off completely. A chorus of nervous murmurs filled the room. Someone laughed uneasily. "Probably just the storm," a girl said. But there was no storm. The windows were white with fog thick as milk. The teacher moved toward the door, muttering about the breaker. Then, a sound. A low, vibrating hum that grew into a screech, metal on metal, tearing through the air. Calla's head snapped toward the window. Beyond the glass, something moved in the fog. Shapes that weren't human, crawling along the outer wall. She froze. The rune on her wrist burned hot. Then the glass shattered. Screams erupted. Desks toppled. One of the creatures, a shifting shadow with jagged limbs, poured through the broken window, its eyes like black stars. Students bolted for the door. The teacher shouted something, then went silent, yanked backward into the fog. Calla's mind went blank. The creature turned toward her, its body dripping darkness. The air smelled like rotting leaves and iron. "Move," she told herself. But her legs refused. It lunged. And then, Luka. He slammed into the thing midair, dragging it to the ground. For a second, Calla saw his face twist in concentration. Then his eyes flared gold. The creature screeched. Luka's hand became claws, his teeth lengthening in a snarl. He tore through the thing with inhuman speed, shadows unraveling around him. Students ran screaming down the hall. Calla ducked behind a desk as the fog spilled further inside. Luka turned to her, half-shifted, his voice low and guttural. "Get out now." She stared at him, trembling. "What are they?" "Nightborne." His eyes flicked toward the hallway. "They've crossed the seal." More screams echoed from outside. Luka pushed away from her, sprinting into the corridor, his body shifting further with every step. Calla followed, despite his warning. The hallway was chaos. Shadows darted along the lockers. Fluorescent lights flickered wildly, painting everything in flashes of white and black. Luka tackled another creature, his growls mixing with the sounds of shattering glass and screams. The air crackled with electricity. Calla could feel it, the same power that had burned her wrist alive. She stumbled into the gym. A group of students huddled inside, crying, phones dead. Then, the doors blew open. A wave of fog rushed in, carrying more of the creatures. Dozens now. They moved like smoke and bone, their shapes flickering between forms. Calla raised her hand instinctively, and the rune on her wrist ignited. Light burst from her palm, silver and blinding. The Nightborne shrieked and recoiled, their edges burning away. For a moment, she stood in the center of the gym, glowing like a star. Then the light sputtered out. She collapsed to her knees, dizzy. A hand grabbed her shoulder, firm, hot. Luka pulled her upright, eyes wild. He was fully transformed now, half man, half wolf, fur bristling, teeth gleaming. He looked monstrous, but to her, he looked alive. "You're not supposed to be here," he snarled, his voice vibrating through his chest. "I couldn't just leave." Another creature lunged. Luka spun, slashing it across the chest. It disintegrated into smoke. He growled, "Stay behind me." The walls shuddered as more Nightborne poured through the ceiling vents, crawling along beams like spiders. Calla's pulse hammered. "We can't hold them all." "Then we don't," Luka said. "We drive them out." He howled, a deep primal sound that made every bone in her body vibrate. The Nightborne froze, the air itself rippling. Then, one by one, they began to retreat, sliding back into the fog like smoke drawn into a vacuum. Silence fell. The gym was a wreck, windows shattered, floors scorched with black marks. Luka stood breathing hard, his claws dripping with black ichor. He turned to Calla, golden eyes dimming as he fought the transformation back, muscles shuddered, bones cracking as he shifted. Within seconds he was human again, bloody, trembling, beautiful in the strangest way. Calla stared, chest heaving. "You changed." He wiped blood from his lip, voice hoarse. "I told you what I was. But this..." She gestured around them, the devastation, the fog still clinging to the walls. "This is real." "Yes." His gaze softened. "Now you finally believe me." Calla swallowed hard. "What do they want?" "You," Luka said simply. "They can sense the mark. Your magic draws them." "Then why didn't they come sooner?" "Because until now, the hollow was sealed tight. Something weakened it." She thought of her dreams, the voice, her mother's whispers. "Finish what I started." Her throat went dry. "I think I did." Luka's expression darkened. "Calla, what did you do?" She hesitated, shaking. "I said a word, from her notes. Protego." He went still. "You cast from a spell you didn't understand?" "I didn't mean to." "You reopened a link," he said grimly. "A doorway they've been waiting centuries to cross." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then tell me how to fix it." He stepped closer, gripping her shoulders. "You can't fix something you don't control. You are the key, Calla. The hollow responds to you. You can't just shut it out anymore." She felt the rune pulse again, like it agreed. Outside, sirens wailed. The fog was already dispersing, leaving behind shattered glass and silent woods. Luka's hand lingered on her shoulder, his eyes searching hers. "You saved people today," he said softly. "I almost got them killed." "No." He shook his head. "You fought back. That's what your mother wanted." The mention of her mother hit her like lightning. "You knew her." Luka's jaw tightened. Everyone in Hollow Pines knew her. She was the last one who tried to close the hollow completely. And she nearly died doing it. Calla stared. She did die. His expression flickered. Sorrow? Guilt? Something unspoken. "Not the way you think." Before she could ask what he meant, the sound of footsteps filled the hall. Teachers, police, panicked voices. Luka took a step back. "They can't see me like this," he murmured. "They wouldn't understand." She grabbed his wrist. "Wait, don't go." He hesitated, then brushed his thumb over the mark on her wrist. "I'll find you after dark. Stay away from mirrors. And don't dream tonight." "Why?" "Because they'll try to pull you through." Then he was gone, vanishing into the fog, leaving only the faint echo of his growl and the smell of pine. Calla stood among the ruins of the gym, her hand trembling against her glowing mark. The world she thought she knew had just shattered. And the night was far from over. The forest had gone quiet again. Too quiet. After the attack, Hollow Pines fell into a stunned, uneasy calm. The school was closed, until further notice. Officially, the story was a gas leak explosion. Unofficially, everyone whispered about the fog, the screams, the things they thought they saw. Calla spent most of the next day in her room, staring at the mark on her wrist. It wasn't just glowing anymore. It pulsed, steady as a heartbeat, and sometimes she swore she could feel another rhythm inside it, beating with hers. She hadn't seen Luka since the night before. His absence felt like static in her bones. When she tried to sleep, the air grew heavy, restless. When she stayed awake, the shadows in her room seemed to watch. By dusk, she couldn't take it anymore. She threw on a jacket and slipped out the back door. The forest waited, darker than usual, fog pooling low along the ground. The path to the old bridge was lit by fragments of moonlight. She didn't have to call his name. Luka stepped from the shadows before she reached the clearing, tall, tense, golden eyes burning in the dark. "I told you not to come out after dark," he said quietly. "I couldn't just sit there." She shot back. "You disappeared. Everyone's acting like nothing happened." He studied her face, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have to see what you saw." "Well, I did. And I'm not a kid, Luka." A faint smirk touched his lips. "You say that like you think I'd treat you like one." The silence between them thickened, charged. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the smell of rain. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. Then she said softly, "You were hurt?" His jaw tensed. "It's nothing. Don't lie. I saw the blood." She stepped closer. "Let me help." He looked away. "It doesn't work like that." "Then how does it work?" He hesitated, then unzipped his jacket just enough for her to see the gash across his ribs. It wasn't bleeding anymore, but the skin was torn and blackened, like it had been burned. Calla gasped. "That's not nothing." "Silver," he said simply. "Takes longer to heal." She knelt beside him, instinct taking over. "Let me see." He caught her wrist before she could touch him. His hand was hot, feverish, and his eyes were too bright. "You shouldn't. It might affect you." "Luka, I already have a glowing rune and nightmares about monsters. I think we're past affect me." That made him laugh. Low, rough, genuine. He let her go. She pressed her palm against his side gently. The heat of his skin burned through her hand. The rune on her wrist flared, and to both their shock, the blackness around his wound began to fade. Luka hissed in pain, gripping her arm. Not to stop her, but to hold on. "What are you doing?" he breathed. "I don't know." Light spilled from her fingers, soft silver, threading into the wound. The scent of pine and smoke filled the air. When the glow dimmed, the injury was gone, just a faint scar left behind. Calla pulled her hand back slowly. "I didn't mean to." "You healed me," he said, staring at her like she'd just rewritten the laws of the world. "It wasn't me," she whispered. "It was the mark." He looked at her wrist, still glowing faintly where his skin had touched hers. Something passed between them then, invisible but undeniable, like a current snapping into place. Luka exhaled. "That's not just any mark." "What do you mean?" He hesitated, eyes flicking toward the moon peeking through the trees. "Among my kind, there's something called a soul bond. It's rare. Dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "When two beings are bound by it, their lives become linked. Pain, strength, even death, shared." She felt her stomach twist. "And you think that's what this is?" He nodded once. "It happens when one saves the other more than once. When magic recognizes it." Her voice came out small. "So I'm bound to you?" "Not completely," he said, though his tone carried doubt. "Not yet." She wanted to laugh, to deny it, but her body betrayed her. The rune pulsed again, glowing in rhythm with the faint light in Luka's eyes. When he stepped closer, the air between them shimmered faintly. He looked at her the way someone looks at something they're not supposed to touch but can't resist. "You shouldn't have been able to heal me. That means your mother's magic runs deeper than I thought." Calla's throat tightened. "You knew her?" You keep saying that. I knew what she fought for, Luka said softly. She was one of the last to stand with us when the hollow opened the first time. She tried to seal it using her life. And you. Me? You were born during the blood moon, the night the hollow tried to break through again. She used your life force to anchor the seal. Calla stared, the ground tilting beneath her. You're saying I'm some kind of conduit, he finished. The hollow's power runs through you. That's why they want you, and why I can't let them have you. She swallowed hard. And the bond? What does it mean for you? It means if you die, I die. Her heart lurched. That's not fair. He smiled faintly, though there was sadness in it. It's not about fairness. It's about balance. The hollow chose. I didn't choose any of this. Neither did I, he said. But here we are. They stood in silence, the forest around them breathing slowly. The moon hung pale and watchful overhead. Calla could feel the bond humming beneath her skin, subtle but alive, a thread connecting her heartbeat to his. What happens now? She asked quietly. He took a step closer, close enough that his breath brushed her hair. Now, we survive. Together. She looked up at him. And after that? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. After that, we figure out what we are. The fog shifted around them, curling like smoke. For the first time, Calla didn't feel afraid. She felt seen. But then Luka's expression changed, sharp, alert. His head turned toward the trees. They're moving again, he murmured. The Nightborne. They know you're mine now. Yours? She echoed, startled. His gaze met hers, fierce, protective, ancient. The bond marked you. They can sense it. And that makes you a target. She exhaled shakily. So what do? We prepare, he said, voice low. Because next time, they won't come for the town. He reached up, brushing his thumb across her cheek, light, fleeting, almost reverent. They'll come for you. Before she could respond, he turned and melted into the trees, the silver of his eyes the last thing to fade. The forest went still again. Calla touched her wrist, feeling the mark pulse once, her heartbeat echoing his somewhere in the dark. And for the first time, she wasn't sure where her soul ended. And this began. The next morning, Hollow Pines felt hollow in name and in truth. News vans lined the streets near the school, though no one had footage of the attack. Freak weather event, they called it. Unexplained gas leak. But Calla knew better, and so did Luka. She hadn't seen him since the night in the woods. He'd disappeared before sunrise, leaving behind only silence and the steady ache of the bond in her wrist. Every few hours, it pulsed, like a heartbeat, not her own. She tried to ignore it, tried to act normal. But Hollow Pines didn't let people pretend for long. By noon, Evelyn had gone to town, muttering about needing supplies before the next storm. The moment the door shut, Calla went to the attic. It was colder up there, the kind of cold that felt deliberate. Dust floated in the slanted sunlight from the small window. The air carried the faint smell of sage and old parchment. She knelt near the boxes she hadn't opened before. One was marked Marlene, private, her mother's name. Sorry, Mom, she whispered, and pried the box open. Inside were fragments of a life Calla barely remembered. Polaroid photos of her mother laughing beside Evelyn, a cracked snow globe of hollow pines, and a bundle of letters tied with red string. But beneath it all was something heavier. A leather-bound journal, blackened at the edges as though it had survived a fire. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it. The cover was carved with the same crescent moon symbol that now marked her wrist. When she opened it, the pages whispered. The handwriting inside was her mother's. Elegant, slanted, written in both English and Latin. The first entry stopped her cold. August 12th, 2006. The seal is weakening. The hollow stirs. The Nightborne are whispering again. Evelyn doesn't believe me, but I feel them beneath the soil, waiting for the next blood moon. I cannot let them take her. I cannot let them take my Calla. Her breath hitched. She flipped to the next page, then the next. Each one was worse. Sketches of runes, rituals, a map of hollow pines showing ley lines converging in the forest clearing she'd seen in her visions. In the margins, words repeated over and over in shaky ink. Protect her. Protect her. Protect her. By the last page, the writing grew frantic. They found me. The circle failed. I bound the hollow's heart to hers. It's the only way to keep it closed. She'll never know. Luka promised to watch over her. I only hope the bond won't destroy them both. Calla froze. Luka promised to watch over her. Her hands went numb. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. He knew, she whispered aloud. He's known all along. The attic seemed to shift around her, the shadows deepening. Her mind replayed everything. Luka's warnings, his disappearances, his silence when she asked about her mother. He'd been part of this before she was even born. She slammed the journal shut, anger rising like heat in her chest. You knew, she muttered. You all knew. The air stirred. A faint whisper rippled through the attic, familiar and wrong. He did it to save you, Calla. She turned sharply. Mom? The whisper came again. Softer this time, sorrowful. You are the seal, my heart. The hollow's guardian. That's why they'll never stop. The light bulb above her flickered violently. Wind rushed through the attic even though the window was closed. The journal trembled in her hands, its pages fluttering open to a sigil she hadn't seen before, 2 crescents intersecting around a single eye. Her wrist burned. The rune flared to life, matching the sigil on the page. The ink shimmered, rearranging itself into words. To break the bond, one must choose. The guardian, or the wolf. Calla stumbled back. Break the bond? She whispered. No, I don't. The attic door slammed open below her. Footsteps, heavy, fast. Calla! Luka's voice sharp, desperate. She backed away from the journal as he appeared at the top of the stairs, out of breath, eyes glowing faintly from the dim light. You felt it, didn't you? She said. The mark. It's burning. He nodded once. You opened something. I found her journal. Her voice shook. You knew my mother. His expression flickered, guilt flashing across his face. Yes. How long? She demanded. Since before you were born, he said quietly. She came to me for help. She was brave, but she was losing control. The Hollow wanted you even then. Calla's throat tightened. You promised to protect me. I did. Then why didn't you tell me? He stepped closer, slow and careful, as if she might shatter. Because the truth can break a person before the Hollow ever does. You weren't ready. She laughed bitterly. Ready? I'm being hunted by shadows, haunted by my dead mother, and apparently I'm a human magic battery. I think I passed ready 3 nightmares ago. Luka winced but didn't argue. He glanced at the journal, still glowing faintly. That book shouldn't exist. She told me she burned it. Well, she didn't. Calla folded her arms, glaring. And now I know about the bond, about what it means for you. He froze. What did it say? That if one of us dies, the other does too. He said nothing, which was answer enough. Her voice dropped. Did you agree to it? Luka's eyes softened, the weight of centuries in his gaze. It wasn't a choice, Calla. The bond was forged the night she sealed the Hollow. You were dying. I gave her my life force to keep you breathing. It tied me to you. She stared at him, stunned. You saved me. He nodded. But it cost us both our freedom. Tears stung her eyes. So all this time, you weren't protecting me because of some oath. You were protecting me because if I died, I would too, he finished. Yes, but that's not why I stayed. The silence that followed was unbearable. The journal's glow dimmed, leaving only moonlight spilling through the attic window. Luka's face was half shadow, half light, a contradiction, like everything about him. Calla sank to the floor, her voice breaking. She used me, Luka. My own mother turned me into a lock. She used what she had to keep you alive, he said softly, and to keep the hollow from swallowing this town whole. You were her hope, not her weapon. She wiped her eyes, shaking. Then what am I supposed to do now? He knelt beside her. Finish what she started. She looked at him. Seal the hollow? He nodded, but not alone this time. Calla's gaze dropped to the journal. The page still shimmered faintly with that impossible line. To break the bond, one must choose the Guardian or the wolf. Her chest ached. And if I have to choose? Luka hesitated, then said, Then you choose what you can live with. His hand brushed hers, and despite everything, the bond hummed again, steady and warm. They sat there for a long time, surrounded by dust and ghosts and the sound of their shared heartbeats. When Calla finally closed the journal, the sigil on the cover pulsed once, like it was listening. Outside, thunder rolled over the mountains. The hollow was stirring again, and this time, it would come for its guardian. By the next evening, the storm that had been brewing over Hollow Pines finally broke. Thunder growled across the mountains, shaking the thin glass of Evelyn's windows. Rain hit the town in cold, relentless sheets, turning the forest roads into rivers of mud. The air felt charged, alive with static and something older, darker. Calla hadn't slept since finding the journal. The words wouldn't leave her mind. The Guardian, or the wolf. Her mother's desperate scrawl haunted her every thought. Luka had left again before dawn, promising only, stay inside tonight. But staying inside had never been Calla's strength. The bond pulsed like a warning under her skin. Restless, uneasy. Every time she tried to focus, her mother's voice whispered from the corners of her memory, You are the seal. When lightning split the sky, she felt something tug inside her chest. A pull, deep and familiar. It wasn't the hollow. It wasn't Luka. It was someone else. A text buzzed on her phone. Alec. I know what's happening, Calla. Meet me by the gym. It's about your mom. Her heart skipped. Alec. Quiet, sweet Alec, who'd been one of the few people kind to her since she arrived. He'd stayed with her after the explosion, helped her clean the blood from her hands. He wasn't part of this madness. He couldn't be. Could he? Still, she grabbed her jacket and flashlight, ignoring the thunder outside. Evelyn was asleep. Luka was gone. And Calla was tired of waiting for answers from everyone but herself. She ran through the rain, her breath sharp in the cold. The gym loomed ahead, the same place where the Nightborne had attacked days before. Its doors hung slightly open, creaking with the wind. Inside, the power was out. The smell of damp wood and something metallic filled the air. Alec? She called. It's me. No answer. She stepped inside, shoes squeaking against the wet floor. Her flashlight beam cut through the dark, across bleachers, lockers, shattered glass. Then it landed on him. Alec stood near the center of the room, his hoodie soaked, hair plastered to his forehead. His smile was faint. Too faint. Hey, he said softly. You came? Of course I did, she replied, breathless. You said it was about my mom. He nodded. It is. I know what she was trying to do, and I know how you can stop this. Something in his tone set off a quiet alarm in her head. Too calm, too rehearsed. How do you know? She asked. He looked away, his fingers twitching slightly. Because I've been working with someone. Someone who understands what's really going on. Luka? She guessed. He laughed, low and bitter. No, Luka's the problem, Calla. He's the reason you're stuck like this. You think he's protecting you, but he's using you. Her pulse jumped. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Alex stepped closer. Your mother's journal said the Hollow's heart was bound to you. Luka's job was to keep the seal alive, by keeping you alive. Not because he cares about you, because you're his prison key. Calla shook her head. That's not true. You felt it, didn't you? The bond. That's not love, Calla. That's a leash. The flashlight trembled in her hand. Why are you saying this? Because I want to help you break it. His eyes glinted strangely in the dark. The Nightborne can free you. Her stomach turned cold. What did you just say? Alex's expression changed, pity and something darker. They promised they'd let me live if I brought you to them, and once they open the Hollow again, none of this will matter. Lightning flashed through the windows, illuminating the thing behind him, a shadow, tall and crooked, with eyes like burning coal. A Nightborne. Calla stumbled backward, horror rising like bile. Alec, what did you do? I didn't have a choice. His voice cracked. You don't know what they do to people who say no. The creature hissed, its claws clicking against the gym floor. Alec flinched, then turned to her again, desperate. Come with me, I can protect you. But Calla saw it now, the faint silver line on his wrist, like a pact carved into his skin, a mark of allegiance. No, she whispered. You betrayed us. The shadow lunged. Calla dove aside as claws shredded the floor where she'd been standing. Her flashlight skidded across the room, shattering. The only light came from the storm outside, white and violent. A growl split the air. Luka. He crashed through the far doors, wolf eyes burning gold, clothes torn and soaked. In one smooth motion, he threw himself between Calla and the creature, shifting mid-leap. The sound of bone and fur rippling filled the air. Then a massive black wolf slammed into the Nightborne, teeth flashing. The impact echoed like thunder. Alex screamed, stumbling backward. No, don't hurt him. He said he wouldn't. But Luka didn't stop. He tore through the shadow with a snarl, light flaring from his claws. The Nightborne shrieked, a sound like metal breaking, before dissolving into smoke. For a heartbeat, silence. Then Alec drew something from his jacket, a jagged shard of silver. Luka! Calla shouted, but it was too late. The blade buried itself in Luka's side. He roared, the sound shaking the rafters, and shifted back, collapsing to his knees. Steam hissed from the wound, the silver burning through his skin. Alec dropped the shard, trembling. I didn't mean to. I thought. Calla's scream tore through the gym. What did you do? The boy stumbled backward, horrified by what he'd done. They said it wouldn't kill him, just weaken him. Get away from him, she shouted, her voice cracking with fury. Lightning flared again, and for an instant she saw her reflection in his eyes, her mother's eyes, blazing with something ancient. Her wrist burned, the rune flared to life, brighter than ever. Alec gasped. What are you? Calla raised her hand. The air around her shifted, humming, heavy. The water on the floor rose, drawn to her. A circle of light formed beneath her feet, the same sigil from her mother's journal. Her voice wasn't entirely her own when she spoke. You brought the Hollow into my world. Now feel what it takes from yours. Alex stumbled backward as the light grew. The wind howled through the broken windows. Then, with a deafening crack, the force of it flung him across the room, into the far wall. He slumped, unconscious. When it was over, the gym was silent again. Calla fell to her knees beside Luka. The silver burned like acid in his skin. He was barely conscious, breath ragged. Luka, please, she whispered, pressing her hand to his wound. Don't you dare die on me. He winced, voice rough. You shouldn't have come. Stop talking. I can heal you. I did it before. Not with silver. His eyes met hers, glowing faintly even now. It's poison, for what I am. Her chest ached. Then I'll take it out. Calla. She didn't let him finish. Her fingers brushed the wound and the bond erupted, fire racing through her veins, light flooding the room. Luka cried out as the silver sizzled and dissolved under her touch. The pain hit her next, burning through her side like she'd been stabbed herself. When the light faded, the wound was gone, and both of them were gasping. She collapsed against him, trembling. He caught her barely. "Why would you do that?" he whispered. "Because if one of us dies," she murmured, her voice fading, "the other does too. Remember?" For a moment, neither spoke. The rain outside softened to a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Then Luka said quietly, "They know where you are now." She looked up, eyes heavy. "Who?" "The Nightborne," he said, "and they're not sending scouts anymore." He met her gaze, golden, fierce, and afraid. "They're coming. All of them." The forest had never been this quiet. Even the rain dared not fall here. By the time Luka could stand again, dawn had tried to break but failed, the sun hiding behind a ceiling of iron-colored clouds. Calla sat beside him on the cracked steps of the gym, exhaustion written in every line of her face. Neither of them spoke. Not about Alec. Not about what came next. The silence between them said enough. When Luka finally did speak, his voice was low and hoarse. "They're gathering at the hollow." Calla looked up. "How do you know?" "I can feel them," he said. "The air hums when they move in numbers. The gateway's waking. It wants you back." She hugged her arms around herself, the rune on her wrist pulsing in quiet agreement. "Then we stop it before it opens." "You don't understand," Luka said, standing, his expression grim. "Once it starts, there's no stopping it. The hollow isn't a place. It's hunger. It devours anything that crosses its path, light, time, souls." "Then maybe it's time someone devoured it," she said, rising to her feet. He turned to her sharply. "You don't get to die for this. And you don't get to decide that for me." Her voice was firm, colder than he'd ever heard it. "If my mother used me to seal it once, maybe I can finish what she started. Maybe I can do it my way." He stared at her for a long moment, torn between fury and awe. "You sound like her." Calla's throat tightened. "Then maybe that's a good thing." The wind carried the scent of pine and smoke. Luka finally nodded. "If we're doing this, we do it together. You stay close. No matter what happens, don't let go." "I won't." He turned toward the tree line. The fog was thicker than usual. Not natural fog, but something alive, swirling, whispering. The woods beyond hollow pines were shifting again, reshaping themselves into something older, wrong. The hollow was bleeding through. They walked for hours, deeper than Calla had ever gone. The path twisted and narrowed, the trees bending like they were watching. Shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, too fast to follow, too close to ignore. At some point, the air grew colder. The forest floor softened into black soil that pulsed faintly underfoot, like the earth itself was breathing. "This is it," Luka said quietly. Calla stopped beside him. Before them stood the stone circle, the same one from her visions. But it wasn't silent anymore. The stones glowed faintly with runes, and in the center, a shimmer like liquid glass floated above the ground, rippling with light. A gateway. She felt her wrist flare in response, the runes searing brighter. "It's calling to me." "It's recognizing you," Luka corrected. "You're its key." He stepped closer to the portal, his wolf senses on edge. "We cross through, there's no guarantee we come back." "Then we make our own way back," she said. Before he could stop her, she reached out and touched the light. The world shattered. For a heartbeat, everything was silence and color and pain. Her skin burned cold, her lungs filled with smoke. Then her feet hit ground again. But it wasn't earth. It was something that looked like it. The hollow stretched before them, endless and wrong. The sky was a bruised violet, the trees twisted and black like veins. Rivers of mist ran through the ground, The air hummed with whispers, voices that weren't voices, speaking her name in 1,000 tones. Calla, Guardian, daughter of the seal. She stumbled. Luka caught her, his hand steady on her shoulder. Even he looked different here, his eyes brighter, sharper, the wolf barely contained beneath his skin. "This place feeds on fear," he said quietly. "Don't let it see yours." She nodded, though her heart was racing. "Where are the Nightborne?" "They'll find us soon enough." They moved through the hollow like ghosts, past hollowed-out trees that bled black sap and lakes that reflected nothing at all. Sometimes Calla caught glimpses of faces in the fog, familiar faces. Her mother's, Alex, even her own, all whispering the same words. "You can't fight what you are." Luka reached for her hand. "They'll use memories against you. Don't listen." But the whispers kept clawing at her thoughts. "He's not saving you. He's bound to you. You're his curse." She looked at Luka, and for a moment, doubt flickered. Then the bond pulsed, not cold, but warm, grounding her again. He squeezed her hand once. "You're stronger than they think." They reached a clearing at the heart of the hollow. A vast pit, glowing from within with faint, sickly light. The air was heavy, metallic. Runes burned in a ring around the chasm's edge. "This is where it began," Luka said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where the first guardian fell, where your mother sealed the gateway." "And where it ends," Calla said. But before she could step forward, the ground shook. The fog coiled inward, gathering, solidifying into forms. Dozens of them, eyes burning like coals, limbs of shadow and smoke. The Nightborne. Their leader emerged from the mist, taller than the rest, draped in darkness shaped like tattered robes. Its voice was a chorus of echoes. "You return to us, child of the seal." Calla stood her ground. "I'm not your child." The creature's smile was a slash of light. "You carry our blood. Your mother only delayed what must be. The hollow reclaims its own." Luka stepped forward, growling low. "You'll have to go through me first." "We already have," the creature hissed. And with that, the others surged forward. The battle was chaos. Luka shifted mid-leap, his form exploding into black fur and fury. He tore through the shadows with claws that burned with moonlight, his roars echoing through the hollow. Calla raised her hands, her rune blazing brighter, runes spiraling up her arms in streams of light. She shouted a word she didn't understand, and the air obeyed. The ground cracked, the mist screamed. Light erupted from the stones around the chasm, forcing the Nightborne back. But there were too many. They kept reforming, feeding on the hollow's energy. Luka fought his way toward her, blood streaking his fur. "You have to seal it now." "I can't. It'll kill me. Then I'll pull you out." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth in his eyes. He'd rather die than lose her. And maybe that was exactly what the hollow wanted. The creature's laughter filled the air. "Choose, Guardian, the wolf or the seal. One must fall for the other to stand." The words from her mother's journal echoed like thunder. To break the bond, one must choose the Guardian or the wolf. Calla's pulse pounded in her ears. The runes on her skin burned, brighter and brighter, until her whole body glowed. Luka shouted her name, but she didn't hear him anymore. She stepped to the edge of the chasm and raised her arms. "I choose both," she whispered. Then she jumped. The light swallowed her whole. Luka roared, diving after her. But before he could reach her, the hollow exploded in a wave of blinding radiance. When the light faded, the forest was gone. The hollow was gone. Only silence remained. The gateway had closed, but Calla was nowhere to be seen. Luka knelt in the ruins of the stone circle, human again, trembling. The bond on his wrist still glowed faintly, which meant she was alive. Somewhere. He lifted his head toward the broken sky and whispered her name. Calla. A whisper answered, faint and distant, but hers. I'm still here. Silence. Then breath. That was the first thing Calla became aware of. Her own breathing, slow and shaky, echoing in the vastness around her. She wasn't dead, not yet. When she opened her eyes, she found herself standing in a void. The air shimmered like liquid glass rippling with faint blue light. There was no sky, no ground, just endless reflections of herself stretching into infinity. The hollow's core, the place between life and oblivion. Calla. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once, deep, ancient, familiar. It wasn't her mother. It wasn't Luka. It was something older. The seal, reborn. The Guardian awakened. Show yourself, she said, though her voice trembled. The reflections around her moved. From them stepped a shape, tall, feminine, cloaked in smoke and light. Its eyes burned with the color of dying stars. Your mother stood here once, it said. She sealed us away with her own life. But you are stronger. The hollow calls you its heir. I'm not your heir, Calla said. I'm your end. The figure tilted its head. You can't destroy what you are. You are the bridge between worlds. You are... Enough! Her rune flared, a brilliant pulse of silver cutting through the dark. I won't be your key. I won't be your prison. I won't be anything but me. The hollow laughed, a sound like the sky breaking. Then you will die. The air erupted. Shadows poured from the void, twisting into monstrous forms. They lunged, fangs, claws, eyes of burning ash. Calla threw out her hands, and light exploded from her palms. The force knocked them back, but she staggered. Every spell she cast drained her, the runes searing like molten fire. Her strength was fading fast. She hit her knees, gasping. The hollow's voice curled around her like smoke. You cannot win. The seal will feed on you until nothing remains. Then, through the chaos, another voice. Faint, ragged, real. Calla. Her heart stuttered. Luka? From the storm of shadows, a figure emerged, torn, bleeding, half wolf, half human. His eyes glowed gold even in the blackness. He shouldn't have been able to follow her here. But somehow he had. He stumbled toward her, each step a war. You didn't think I'd let you face this alone, did you? She ran to him, catching him before he fell. You shouldn't be here. The hollow will tear you apart. He smiled weakly. It's already tried. The ground beneath them shifted, cracking open into a vast chasm filled with swirling light. The hollow screamed, its voice echoing through every surface. You cannot stop the bond. It will consume you both. Luka cupped her face, his hands trembling. It's right, you know. She shook her head fiercely. No, don't. I can feel it, Calla. The bond's too strong now. If you use your power to seal the hollow, it'll drain your life. But if I take the bond fully, you'll die, she whispered. He smiled, small, tender, unbearably sad. I'd rather it be me. Luka, listen. His voice grew softer, more urgent. You once asked me what we are. The truth is we're the same. You're the light that keeps me human. I'm the darkness that keeps you alive. Together, we're balance. That's why the hollow wants us. We are what it can't be. Her eyes filled with tears. Then we fight it, together. He hesitated, then nodded. Together. The hollow roared again, the sound shaking the void. The sky split open, pouring shadows. Luka shifted fully, his body blazing with silver fire, fur gleaming like liquid moonlight. He charged the oncoming swarm, every movement a storm of claws and fury. Calla rose, her arms raised, the runes along her skin burning brighter than ever. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her memory. Magic isn't power, my heart. It's choice. She planted her feet, lifted her hands, and chose. Light burst from her like a nova. The shadow screamed as the runes spun from her body. weaving into a vast sigil that filled the hollow sky. The air trembled. The world cracked. Luka fought his way back to her, collapsing at her side. "It's working." "No," she said through gritted teeth. "It's killing me." Her veins glowed silver. The light began to flicker. She could feel her heartbeat faltering, her body giving in. Luka caught her before she fell completely. "Stop," he said, desperate. "You've done enough." She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "If I stop now, it all comes back. Everything. Everyone dies." Tears burned his eyes. "Then I'll save you." "How?" she asked weakly. He leaned closer, his forehead against hers. "By doing what I should have done from the start." He bit his wrist, blood shimmering like liquid starlight, and pressed it to the mark on her skin. The bond flared, brighter than it had ever been. Light and shadow twisted together, roaring through both of them. "Luka, no," she cried. "Too late," he said with a broken smile. "You said we fight together. I'm holding up my half." The light engulfed them both. The hollow screamed, not in triumph this time, but in agony. The sigil collapsed inward, pulling every shadow, every whisper, every piece of darkness into itself. Calla saw her mother's face one last time in the light, smiling, proud. "You did what I couldn't." Then everything went white. When Calla opened her eyes again, she was lying on cold earth. The stone circle. Rain was falling softly through the broken clouds. Hollow Pines was quiet again. No whispers, no fog, no monsters. Just the forest breathing like it had been freed. She sat up slowly, her head pounding. "Luka." Silence. Her heart plummeted. "Luka." Then, a sound. A groan. She turned. And there he was, human again, lying a few feet away. Pale, still, but breathing. She crawled to him, trembling. His pulse fluttered under her fingers. Faint, but real. His eyes opened, gold fading back to amber. "Hey," he rasped. "Still alive?" A tear slid down her cheek, half laugh, half sob. "Barely." He smiled weakly. "Guess that makes two of us." She glanced at her wrist. The rune had changed, no longer a single crescent, but two, intertwined. The bond, remade. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I gave it back," he said. "My strength. My life. Everything the hollow tried to take. But you'll..." He pressed a finger to her lips. "I'm not going anywhere. Not as long as you're still breathing." The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. But for once it wasn't the silence of dread. It was peace. The hollow was gone. The bond was whole. And for the first time since she'd arrived in Hollow Pines, Calla felt like herself. Not the guardian, not the seal, but a girl who had survived. She leaned against Luka's shoulder as dawn broke over the trees, pink and gold spilling through the fog. He whispered, "So what now?" She smiled faintly, exhaustion softening her features. "Now we rest." The rain had washed everything clean. A week had passed since the battle, though for Calla Monroe time no longer felt like something that moved in straight lines. Some mornings she woke to the sound of her aunt humming downstairs, to the smell of pine and firewood, and almost believed her life had gone back to normal. Other mornings, she could still feel the hollow breathing beneath her skin, but the forest was quiet now. No whispers, no shadowed figures in the fog, only wind through the trees, and the faint shimmer of moonlight breaking through the clouds. Tonight, the moon was new, hidden, silent. Calla stood at the edge of the woods, her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. She ran her thumb along the mark on her wrist. Two crescent shapes joined at the center, glowing faintly under the night sky. The bond. Behind her, footsteps crunched softly. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Luka said, his voice low, threaded with that teasing roughness she'd grown used to. "You remember what your aunt said?" Calla smirked without turning. "You mean the part where she told me to stay away from trouble? Or the part where she said you were trouble?" He came up beside her, hands in his jacket pockets, golden eyes glinting faintly in the darkness. She's not wrong. For a moment, they just stood there, two silhouettes framed by mist and moonlight, the wood stretching endlessly before them. It should have felt eerie, but it didn't. Not anymore. I keep thinking about it, she said quietly. What it cost, what we became. Luka didn't answer right away. His breath misted in the cool air. We didn't become anything new, Calla. We just stopped pretending. She looked at him then, really looked. The faint scar on his jaw, the weariness that still lingered behind his smile, the quiet sadness that came from surviving too much. You risked everything, she said. For me. He met her gaze. You would have done the same. I did, she said softly. That's the problem. The wind moved through the trees like a sigh. Luka tilted his head, studying her. You're still afraid. Of what? That the hollow's not gone. That we're still tied to it somehow. She didn't answer. The truth was heavier than words. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, smell the faint trace of rain and smoke on his skin. The hollow took what it wanted, but it didn't win. You did. She looked up at him, the mark on her wrist glowing faintly in response to his presence. Then why does it still feel like it's waiting? Watching? Luka's expression softened. Because it's part of you now, just like the moon's part of the night. But that doesn't make it your enemy. He reached out, brushing his fingers against her wrist, the touch sparking warmth through her veins. It just means you carry the light that can hold the dark back. Always. Her throat tightened. You make it sound simple. It's not, but it's real. The forest whispered faintly, not in warning, but in peace. Somewhere an owl called. The world felt alive again. They began walking, no destination, just movement. The path was lined with wet leaves and ghost light from the hidden moon. Every few steps their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. After a while, Calla said, Do you ever wish it hadn't happened? The curse, the bond, the hollow, all of it? He thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, I used to wish that. But if none of it happened, I wouldn't have met you. She smiled faintly. That's dangerously close to romantic. He grinned. Don't tell anyone. They stopped near the old stone circle, the same place where it had all begun and where it had nearly ended. Moss covered the stones now, glistening from the rain. The air felt lighter somehow, like the weight of centuries had finally lifted. This place feels different, Calla said. It should, Luka murmured. You remade it. She frowned. I don't remember doing that. You didn't have to remember. You just had to be. The hollow tried to twist what your mother created, but when you sealed it, you cleansed it. Now it's part of the forest again. Balanced. They stood in silence, listening to the night. A faint breeze brushed past, carrying the scent of pine and rain and earth. Luka turned to her, his expression gentler than she'd ever seen it. So, he said softly, what are we now? The question hung between them, echoing from that night beneath the dying moon, the moment when he'd saved her, binding their lives together forever. She took a step closer until their foreheads touched. We're what's left, she whispered. And what comes next? He smiled against her skin. That's a good answer. I learned from the best, she said, eyes glinting. He huffed a quiet laugh, wrapping an arm around her waist. You mean from the most stubborn werewolf in Hollow Pines? I was being polite. They stood like that for a long time, two broken pieces that somehow fit perfectly. The moon stayed hidden, but the light between them was enough. As the wind shifted, Calla looked toward the horizon. Beyond the trees, faint silver light crept over the mountains. Not the moon this time, but dawn. A new beginning. Luka, she said softly. Yeah? If the hollow ever stirs again? He met her gaze, eyes glowing faintly in the rising light. Then we'll face it. Together. She nodded, her voice steady. Together. Later that morning, when the sun finally rose high enough to burn away the last of the mist, Calla stood on the porch of her aunt's house, watching Luka disappear into the forest trail. His figure blended into the light, fading but never truly gone. She touched her wrist one last time. The mark pulsed faintly, warm and alive. A heartbeat that wasn't just hers. In Hollow Pines, the fog was clearing. Not gone forever, but changed. The town slept easier now. The woods were no longer whispering. But somewhere, deep in their roots, something ancient kept watch, not in malice, but in reverence. The Guardian had awakened, and this time she was not alone. The fog has lifted from Hollow Pines. For now. Calla Monroe has faced the darkness that took her mother, unlocked the magic bound within her blood, and stood against the hollow itself. But power never truly sleeps. And in the silence that follows victory, something ancient begins to stir once more. The bond that saved her life may soon be the very thing that endangers it. Stay connected for Season 2. Moonbound, the blood of the hollow. New alliances will form, old secrets will surface, and under the next new moon the Guardian and the wolf will learn that not all monsters hide in the forest. Some wear familiar faces. Follow the howl. The story isn't over. It's only just begun.